All right, every year, asset titling mistakes cost people thousands and sometimes tens of thousands, and in some cases, even millions of dollars. And you're sitting there wondering, oh, should this account be individual? Should it be joint? Should I put my daughter on the account? Should I put it in a trust? You're not sure. There's all these different asset titling methods. And by making a simple mistake, you can cost you and your family thousands and thousands of dollars. So we're going to talk about that today. But before we get into it, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you enjoyed this video, click the thumbs up button, give us a like, make sure you share it with your friends, and let's get into it.
He watches the markets.
In the great city of Memphis, Tennessee.
If they raise rates tomorrow, it could be a sign of confidence.
The financial advisor extraordinaire.
He's with McAdams Group.
Of course, Wall Street doesn't like rising interest rates.
And I know people from all over the Memphis area come to visit you for help with their RMD.
David McAdams is with us.
David McAdams.
David McAdams.
There are exceptions to the rule.
That's very interesting because that's kind of against conventional wisdom.
That's the insanity of it.
All right, so like I was saying, there's all these different ways to title things. You know, ownership matters, and there's a lot of confusion. And I would say in 25 years of working with thousands of retirees, I have had zero that came in for a first appointment that had all of their assets titled the way that we would recommend them. Now you're sitting there saying, oh, well, this must be easy. David, why don't you just tell me what you recommend? How should I title my assets? It's not that simple because it depends. You see, every different asset titling method has a different legal implication. It works differently if you die. It works differently if you're being sued, in a bankruptcy, in a divorce scenario. All these asset titling methods have different legal implications in these different situations. So it really depends on, are you single? Are you married? Do you have children? Who are your beneficiaries? What type of asset are we talking about? Is it a bank account? Is it real estate? Is it an IRA? There's all these different things to consider when you're selecting a titling method. Now, let's talk about some basics. Let's talk about some common mistakes that people make. One of the most common mistakes I see people make when they're titling an asset, when they're setting up an account, is individual titling. That's right, individual titling. You'll even see this with married couples. They'll come into my office, we'll be looking at their bank accounts, land, real estate, properties, things like that. And inevitably, many of them have a bank account that's just in their name only. Or they have some land or a rental property. And I'll say, how is that titled? Oh, that's just titled in my name. It's not joint with your wife? No, it's just in my name. Not really sure why we set it up that way. Not sure if it should be set up that way, but that's how it's set up. So think about what you're accomplishing when you have an individual titling and you're incapacitated or you're deceased. What's going to happen? Well, if you don't have your legal documents properly structured and you're incapacitated, you've now forced your loved ones into an expensive court process called conservatorship. And I know in my local municipality where I live, if you have a conservatorship that's not contested, you're doing pretty good to spend $8,000 by the time you get that done. And then you're forcibly taking away someone's rights and taking over control of their assets. And now you have a court process and reporting and accounting fees. And that's just because you made the mistake of titling your asset individually. Or even worse, you die. Now the asset's frozen. It goes through an expensive court process. It goes into a will if you have one. If you don't have a will, you've died intestate. Great. Now the state controls the distribution of the asset. And unfortunately, a lot of heirs, they disagree, they get attorneys, they fight over it. You don't want to put your family in that situation. So where possible, you want to avoid individually titling an asset. But you're saying, okay, well, great. Does that mean I should just put my wife on the account? Or should I jointly title it with my brother or my cousin or a loved one or a friend? Well, think about what you're accomplishing. So now it's jointly titled. Okay, so great. You've postponed the probate court process. But what happens at the second death? Or what happens if you're going to dinner with a spouse or your loved one and you both die in a car accident? Now the asset's frozen, goes right back through the will, or God forbid you don't even have a will, you're dying intestate, you're going into an unnecessary court process called probate court. As an aside, we believe at McAdams Group that you should never go through an unnecessary, expensive court process called probate court. We educate and teach our clients on how to avoid probate. So instead of spending tens of thousands of dollars in court costs and attorney's fees, guess how much you should be spending? Zero. But jointly titling an asset is the second most common mistake we see, because all you've done is postpone probate. A third mistake is not titling your asset where it effectively has a beneficiary, okay? Now, not all investments or assets have a beneficiary document. They don't have a custodial document. Think of the three assets that have a custodial document. There's three. There's life insurance, there are annuities, and there are qualified retirement plans. If you have money in one of those three categories, you fill out a beneficiary form. And by the way, that beneficiary form trumps the will. Many of you didn't know that. The beneficiary form actually trumps the will. But what if it's a piece of land? Or what if it's a bank account? Or what if it's some stock that you have shoved in a shoebox in the back of your closet? Well, you don't have that beneficiary custodial document. But there are ways to effectively put a beneficiary on there. You could make it POD, payable on death, if it's a bank account or a bank CD or a money market or a savings or checking account. If it's a stock or a brokerage account or a bond, you could consider making it TOD, transfer on death. Now, by the way, before you watch this video and run out and you start retitling all your assets, let me warn you, I'm not telling you to go to the bank and put payable on death on your bank account. That could be a huge mistake in and of itself. I'm not telling you to call your financial advisor and retitle your brokerage account transfer on death. That could be a huge mistake. What I'm simply explaining is I'm educating you that there are different titling methods. Ownership matters. And if you want to avoid probate court, those are a couple of ways that could be appropriate under the right circumstances. But there's a problem. A little bit of knowledge can be a dangerous thing. So if you run down and you put your wife on your bank account as a joint asset, or you put payable on death, so you've effectively put a beneficiary on the bank account, but it doesn't really tie in with the rest of your planning, it could be a huge mistake. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But the third biggest asset titling mistake is effectively not naming a beneficiary or something that has a similar impact of having a beneficiary in the account, such as POD, payable on death, TOD, transfer on death, or in some cases, even a trust. Now, what can you do? Well, hold on. Be careful. What's the solution? I don't know the solution to tell you because this is a short video and I'm trying to educate you on some basic do's and don'ts, but what you should do really depends on a number of different variables. You know, at McAdams Group, we believe that estate planning, we believe that financial planning, we believe that it should be simple, easy to implement, and inexpensive. Most of our clients want to avoid probate court when they die. They want to protect their children from unforeseen divorces and lawsuits. They want to maintain their principal so they don't want to run out of money before they run out of life. They want to have enough income to last their lifetime. They want to decrease fees, decrease risk, increase income, and they want to keep their money safe and secure and not outlive it. So if those are some of your goals, click on the link below, fill out a simple 1-minute questionnaire, and we can help.